Jack's back with us. He abandoned us last week, but I managed to wrangle him back, get him back on with us. Jack, how you doing, man?
Doing well. Doing well. Can't complain. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, man. I'm getting ready for kind of a busy weekend. I've
What do
got
you got?
a I've got a Duke City show tomorrow. Then Saturday I'm going to Phoenix. I've got a Slam U show there. So I'm basically working the show Friday night in Albuquerque, getting a small amount of sleep, and then driving out to Phoenix the next day.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, so that's my weekend. It'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it though.
Nice. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not doing much this weekend. It's going to be a heavy work weekend and got a couple training sessions.
Nice. Like for you or for clients?
Uh,
Both?
Training
All the above?
sessions will be, yeah, I mean, yeah, yeah. Training sessions would be me.
Sick. Well, since you were not here last week, and based off of what I was talking about with some of the viewers, by the way, without you here, we had more viewers and more people commenting. So,
I'll just,
you know, you know. But, well, come back. Because you weren't here, because I was having some fantastic conversations with people, I made the call for us for what we're going to be talking about this week. And I texted you about it. You know, you're not coming in blind, obviously. But we are talking about the old food scales this week. So this time we're basically talking about stuff for, this is for anybody that's tried in the past to lose weight or build muscle, and they've thought that their nutrition's on point, and for whatever reason, it's just not working. Like they're sticking to the numbers and the scale is not moving, or the scale is moving in the wrong direction, even worse. And so we are going to spend our time here tonight talking about how to make sure we are actually hitting the numbers that we think we're hitting.
yeah, this is super important. We'll get into it, but I definitely have some personal examples of when I don't track versus when I do track and the disconnect between hitting my intended goals and not. And the scale was a big piece of the puzzle for me to seeing progress. And I know you've probably got a similar story as well.
Yeah, it's while I dug around on this a little bit, just getting ready for the episode and writing the outline for us and all that, and something that I found that really makes a lot of sense was just how terrible we are at self-reporting. Self-reporting meaning not using a scale or something to actually verify what we're logging. Self-reporting is basically just looking at it and going like, yeah, that's about, 4 ounces, or that's about 50 grams. Usually we're anywhere between, on average, 20 to 30% off. Like we underestimate by 20 to 30%, meaning if we think we're at about 1,000 calories, we're probably closer to 12 or 1,300.
And that adds up
So, and
very
that
quick.
adds up. Most calorie deficits that a lot of people get, especially from coaches, are usually around starting off in that 250 to 300 range. So if you're off once at that sort of a margin, you've already wiped out the deficit. And if
Mhm.
you're wrong a second time that day, now you're in a surplus. And in a couple weeks, you're going to be frustrated when nothing seems to be working because you think you're sticking to your numbers well, but you're really not.
Yep. And it takes a little bit of time too to figure that out because you might start getting frustrated with what's happening, right? You're maybe your weight's not changing. Maybe your weight is changing, it's going up or it's going down, and it's the opposite of what your goal is. And it comes back to how accurate are you being with your recording or reporting?
Yeah. And it comes to really a lot of times what I find it comes to is people just haphazardly using a scale. If they're using one at all, usually they'll have one and it's just lost somewhere in the pantry. It's collecting dust. It's just like it's the batteries are still brand new because it's not being used, but they have one.
I was gonna say if only it beeped like a smoke detector. I
If
mean,
only
here,
if only it beeped like a smoke detector. When
you
it
just
when when it doesn't get used for 3 days, it just starts beeping.
I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna create a scale company and then it beeps at you when you don't use it. All right. Well, you know what? It's like what we want to cover today is how to use the food scale, right? We want to dumb it down so it makes sense, right? We're both huge proponents of when you understand something, you can better apply yourself to it. Um, a lot of what we kind of alluded to is people will buy the food scale with the intent to use it but they don't actually know how to use it. Like they know gravity plays a role and turning it on plays a role, but how to take your macros, how to take your food items and convert that to something that's actually applicable towards your goals, whatever it might be. Commonly fat loss, but I would say just as important going into some sort of surplus to build muscle because we all know those handful of guys are like, I can't gain weight to blah blah blah, and it's I can eat anything.
I was that guy. I was the I could eat anything I wanted to, and I would sit down occasionally and eat an entire large pizza with pepperoni, and the scale wouldn't budge. So I thought I had that magic fast metabolism that everybody said. When realistically, what was going on is, yeah, I would eat that whole pizza, probably not eat anything for the rest of the day, probably not eat breakfast the next day because I'm still full. Or if I did, I was usually picking on something real small.
Mhm.
And what I found with literal 100% accuracy is every time somebody's come across and said they're a hard gainer or they have a fast metabolism, they are massively overestimating how much food they're eating.
Yep.
Because when I really got down and I discovered tracking and I started tracking back when I was 130 pounds, I was averaging 1,600 calories a day. No wonder I couldn't put weight on.
Mhm. Yeah, and I get, like just piggybacking off of that, through high school and college, I thought I was eating enough. Or I guess it was more of I got stuck in the wanting to look a certain way, but then as soon as I stepped foot in the gym, I was getting pissed off with myself because I wasn't getting stronger. Like I could not get stronger. And slowly over time, I did eat more while still trying to maintain a certain look and made some progress, but it wasn't until like my second year of college, right? I'm going to school for exercise science and nutrition at this time, and I actually start eating enough, and all of a sudden my lifts skyrocket, my recovery skyrockets. I'm no longer 185 pounds. Suddenly Jack is 190 pounds. Jack hits 200,
It's
and
it's it's wild how all of a sudden that just magically happens, right?
and it's because of this one fancy tool that we have here.
Yeah. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about. So we're first going to talk about because it's a two-part equation, right, Jack? First is it's the measuring, it's the weighing, and then the second part is what the hell you do with those numbers when you actually get it all together. So we're going to spend a little bit of time with one, show you how to make use of that one, and then we're going to spend some time on the other, show you how to track it. So Jack, what do you look for in a food scale? What are your top main qualities that you look for when looking at the 4,000 different food scales that are out there? What grabs your attention? Is it getting the most expensive food scale?
You're asking the guy that's looking for the $10 scale. You can spend a lot of money. I having the different units is going to be a big deal, right? So we're talking milliliters, fluid ounces, pounds and ounces, and to me, most importantly, grams. Um, so I like the simple ones. I'm not a big fan of the haptic or touchscreen ones. I want buttons. I'm that guy. Um, but I mean, those are the basics, and then being able to hold a plate or a bowl and still be able to read the screen. That's important. Those are like the bare bones basics.
Yeah. And I'm right there with you. I look for the same things. I look for the different units. I look specifically for grams and milliliters. Most of them these days have at least four. They usually have milliliters. They have milk milliliters, which is kind of cool. They'll have grams and they'll have ounces because there's a little bit of a difference in density between water and milk. And so it has, because milk is a super common liquid, the scales just have that feature built into it, which is awesome. Especially for somebody like me that likes his cereal at the end of the day, I can accurately track my milk. Um, the other thing I like is a digital scale.
Mhm.
I think there are still some that have analog scales, and those are fine. But if we're talking about precision, having a digital scale just makes sure that, you're not misreading the number by any possible margin of error. It removes that. It tells you specifically in clear numbers, this is what it is.
Yep. It's not a quivering needle, and you're like you got to stand over it and catch the shadow right. Uh,
Yeah. The
yeah.
cool thing is any scale that does that is it goes down as low as like $10.
Hmm.
So you don't have to break the bank for it. They all come with the batteries that they need. Some of them it's like double A's or triple A's, or they've got the little round 2032 or 1032, something like that, the watch battery. And usually the batteries last for a long time. So it's super inexpensive to set up. It really doesn't cost a whole lot of money. It doesn't really take any time. You turn it on and it's usually ready to go.
Yeah, I was gonna say the ones that I even recommend my clients get, we're talking 10 to 14 bucks. The one that we have is coming up on 10 years old and still super accurate, right? We've got another scale, we just don't use it, but they both still read out basically the same. So you don't need to spend $150 on a scale. You can definitely get away with the 10 to $25 scale and it will last a very, very long time. So don't
Yeah.
overpay that.
So yeah, you don't have to worry about buying the expensive one. There's one out there that has it like prints a food label for you. I'm not sure how that works, but it's like 80 bucks or something. I don't know how accurate that is, but I've never messed with it, so I can't say if it is or isn't, but it's 80 bucks and I'd rather just stick with my $10 guy. So,
That's super cool. Well, and you know what? Today too is like one of the cool things is Tony's got an awesome setup right now where um, we're actually going to put the scale and weigh things out on the screen, like live with you, so you can see how that works in real time. And obviously, if you're watching with us, you can ask questions. If you're watching later, you can always shoot us a message, and we'd be happy to follow up with you. But that's one of the cool things. We're going to do an on-screen demonstration today.
yeah. So, with that, what do you say we just jump right into that, Jack?
Good.
So, so there is hold on. So there's our scale live and in color right there. I tried to clean it, but it's black and it's glossy, so that's kind of the best it's going to do without getting some glass cleaner, which I did not get because I was working on that maybe a couple minutes before we went hot here. So, but it's going to do the job. This is a typical basic food scale. It's super thin. Um, it's got the battery compartments right there. So you just put it in place and you just leave. This is the food scale I got when I got back from Australia like 7 years ago. So, like anything else, if you take care of it, it'll take care of you. So it's still in great shape. Um, while I was picking it up, it turned itself on, but you hold it, it'll turn off. So all you do is, right, your typical power symbol right there, you just hit that and it just automatically zeroes out. So food scale's on, it's ready to go. There's a couple of different things you can do right here. So you can legit just throw the food right on the scale and it'll just weigh it, right? But then you have to clean the scale. I'm not really a fan of that anyway. So usually what I do is I'll put whatever I'm gonna be cooking in or whatever the food's going in, I'll throw that on the scale first. And especially because a lot of times it's loose food. It's like rice or cereal or like mashed potatoes. And it's just the way I do it is the way less messy way. So I've got a bowl that I grabbed because we're basically going to throw some cereal on here, show you how it all works. So you can take the bowl and just throw it right on the scale. And the first thing you see is it already just shoots the number right up. It goes to 302 grams. The first thing you want to do after you put your bowl, or you can put a pan on here, you can put a glass. This is a flat surface, so whatever fits on there you can use. But when you throw it on there, if you hit the tare button, it'll reset the scale. Now you're back at zero. So now it's basically counting the weight of the bowl in the total weight that it displays. And if you take it off, it'll basically just go minus 302, which will come into play here in a couple minutes with the second thing we're going to weigh. So I've got a cup of cinnamon toast crunch because that's what I'm going to eat as part of my dinner once we get off the phone. So this is just going to help everything as far as cleanup goes. So there's two ways you can do this. I do it what I consider to be an easier way, which is I go based off the serving size on the label. So if you go to the back of the label of the Cinnamon Toast Crunch box or the bag, whatever you buy, a serving is 42 grams. And I just know that because I've been eating this every day, like 5 days a week for months at this point. So it's literal muscle memory. So it's 42 grams. So when you weigh it, the reason I think this is easier is because you can weigh it, you can scan the barcode and just put one serving and you're done. So you just have to match the scale with what it says on the label. Alternatively, you can just fill the bowl however much you want, and if it says 53 grams, you can go into your tracking app of choice like Chronometer and just tell it 53 grams specifically, and it'll adjust the numbers accordingly. So basically, all you do, you take your cereal and you just start adding it to the bowl or the container or whatever you have, and you just stop. Again, you can stop at 42. You can throw the whole cup in there. You can just completely fill the bowl up, and whatever number it says is what you put in Chronometer. But I mean that's it. That's how you weigh something. And so if you were getting ready to make rice, which usually I've got a rice cooker that I use, so I'll take the inside bowl out and I'll put that on the scale and I'll just throw the rice right in there and I'll just weigh it that way. If I was cooking chicken, I would take the pan or whatever I was cooking it in, I would put it on the scale, zero it out, hit that tare button, add the chicken on, and then weigh it that way. For something like chicken, I would use instead of grams, which you can use, it's just going to give you a really big number, but you can switch it to ounces. Um, Grams I would use primarily for dry foods like, cereals, rice, pasta, anything like that, where the serving is basically given to you in grams. You would just measure in grams to just stay in line with that. And if the serving is given to you in ounces, you measure it in ounces, basically match up with whatever the label is. So that's that, right? 42 grams of Cinnamon Toast Crunch. You go in, you weigh it up. Um, the other thing I want to show you how we can use a food scale is using it to weigh things that are in a container and you maybe don't want to weigh out what you're taking, or you don't want to weigh out the amount that you've taken out. And so what I've got is I've got everybody's favorite. I've got peanut butter. Some people might like crunchy, some people might like creamy, but you throw it on the scale, right? Boom. And right away, 310 grams because it has not been tared out from our last adventure. So you hit your button, give it a couple of seconds, it'll balance out. We're zeroed there. And then what you can do, and you can do this for like peanut butter, you can do it for jelly, you can do it for sauces or anything that's in any sort of glass jar, container, anything like that. There's two ways you can really do it. One, you can take the entire plate of food that you already have and put that on here and then just weigh the sauce as it gets added to the plate. So you can do that. If you are getting ready to add the sauce to a dish as you're getting ready to cook it, you can still weigh it there, or you can just weigh it by zeroing out the jar and taking out whatever we're going to use and then bringing it back to the jar and see what it says. So here's what I mean. So our scale right now is zeroed out, right? Boom, zero. So what you do is you dip in, you could use a spoon. Most people do for their peanut butter. You can use a knife and grab however much you're going to use. Boom, boom, boom. And what you see is you've got a negative 17 listed there. That negative 17 is equivalent to the 17 grams of peanut butter that's on this knife. So that's what you would log in Chronometer, MyFitnessPal, whatever. And you can do the same thing, right? You can go the serving route where it says a serving is 32 grams, which by the way is not what anybody has when it comes to peanut butter. So you can go serving size and just go 32 grams and measure one serving, or you can just grab whatever, right? 30 grams and just call it 30 grams and just put that in a Chronometer. So you can go either way. That's really essentially how food tracking goes. What, Jack? 98, 99% of the time, maybe even 100.
It's gonna be the majority of the time. The thing what the scale does is we take the whatever the food is, its relationship with gravity, right? We're taking its weight, and then that weight is converted into its value. What we look at things like protein, carbs, and fats. So it's sometimes right because it's like, oh, he just took out 32 grams of protein or no, of 32 grams of peanut butter. I'm already confused myself. 32 grams of peanut butter, and it equates to X grams of protein, X grams of carbs, X grams of fat. So weight is in grams, and then oftentimes the value, almost all the time, is going to be in grams, which also leads to calories because protein, carbs, and fats, right? We know those are our macronutrients. Proteins, 4 calories per gram. Carbs, 4 calories per gram. Fats, 9 calories per gram. So based on the weight, you get a value. You get it in grams, and then you also get the equivalent in calories when you take the total grams of each macronutrient times their caloric load, and then you get your total calories from, say, just peanut butter.
Yeah. And so, back in, a long time ago, before we had smartphones, before we had the internet readily available, what bodybuilders had to do is they would have to sit there with a notebook and a pen and a pad and all that, and they would have to just sit there and write down, you know, 30 grams of whatever. These are the macros, and they would, if they were super serious about it, they would go in and actually do the math for you. The fantastic thing is, because of technology, we do not have to do that anymore. Now, you can use, there's a few different food tracking apps out there, and a lot of them have a lot of features in common. Most useful one to me is a barcode scanner, because you can take your Cinnamon Toast Crunch, you can take your peanut butter, you can just scan the barcode. It'll give you the base macros and calories for a single serving, and you can just adjust appropriately based off of what you're actually having. So I am working on pulling something up really quickly. I'm pulling up basically Chronometer so I can show you how it works in application.
And I know in the past we did a video going over how to use Chronometer. But yes, the barcode feature saves a bunch of time, right? A lot of these apps, MyFitnessPal and Chronometer are going to be like the super popular ones. Chronometer is totally free. MyFitnessPal has a paywall for their barcode.
Haters.
We're a big fan of Chronometer because it's more user friendly right now. Um, but instead of having to just hit the magnifying glass and search your food, which comes up pretty quickly, you can just hit the barcode, hover over it, boom, pick your servings, pick your grams, move on to the next. Saves a
What
bunch of
they're
time.
what they're starting to roll out with is because I use Carbon as well.
Yeah,
And what Carbon can actually do that I don't think Chronometer can do yet, but I think it's coming soon, is it can scan the nutrition label. So if you scan the barcode, it doesn't find an entry, you can just scan the label. It'll just pull the info straight off of that too. It'll
Chrono-
pull, it does. It'll pull the serving, it'll pull calories, macros, the whole thing. Any vitamins that it can see, it'll pull the entire thing.
Yep. Yeah, Chronometer. So if Chronometer doesn't have it in their it's not in their library,
Yeah.
you just take a picture of the front of the package, you take a picture of the nutrition label, create the food.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So here, obviously, it's going to look a little different on a phone. You don't have that ad there usually, but this is pretty similar to what it'll look like on a phone. So this is the cinnamon, the cinnamon toasters, because that's technically the actual cereal it is. And so I searched for it, but if you had the phone, obviously you can just do a barcode scan and it'll pull it up. Um, it has macros right here, right? Protein, carbs, fat, total calories, done. Has a bunch of other nutrients. So it has listings for all the vitamins and all that that's in there as well. Serving, right? 42 grams. I was right on the money there. So it has that, and you can go to grams and, 42 grams right there, same number. If I threw the rest of that cup in and say it gave me an extra 20 grams, we would say 62 grams, and it just scales it appropriately. So boom, 258 calories. And so that's it. You would basically just hit, right, 42 grams, add to diary. It does the math. It tells you everything else, right? So here's my targets for everything: energy, protein, carbs, fat. It just does all the math for you. So you just have to worry about getting those bar gauges from the left all the way to the right, and just don't go over, and you're set.
Beautiful. Well executed. It's pretty straightforward. It's one of those things too, is like we both, I mean, I don't want to say we both, but sometimes too is like when you're learning to track, start with one macronutrient. Look at barcodes and one macronutrient. Look at protein and
Just
scan
protein.
barcodes.
Yeah.
You know, just for simplicity's sake. Um, yeah, I know one thing. We'll
Yeah, all
see.
I all I do with my clients is we just focus on calories and protein. So we don't measure. we don't focus on carbs or fat. They get measured just in the process of tracking. But we basically just focus on total calories and total protein. Um, because if you're focusing on, especially if you're focusing on fat loss, those are the only two things that you need to focus on. We've seen time and time again that no matter how you shift the macro balance between carbs and fat, you get the same result when it comes to rate of weight loss, so long as overall calories and protein are kept in check. So instead of focusing on three or four things, we just focus on those top two, and the rest just falls where they may.
Mhm. One of the things, I don't know if I cover, do we want to cover mistakes that people usually make with the scale?
Absolutely. Get right into it.
So everything that Tony covered on the scale, from turning it on, tearing it, changing the unit. So something that I've had happen with clients is like, their unit was, they bumped it and it was on something else. There's no panic between milliliters and grams because it comes up with the same number. But ounces, pounds, fluid ounces, milk fluid ounces, if that's something that your scale does,
If it's there, yeah.
it's there. I was gonna say mine's not high tech enough, but I think it's cool. It's totally valid. It's great. There should be an eggnog fluid ounces as well then. So
That's the Christmas edition scale.
yeah, yeah. But it's just making sure that you've got your units set properly. And then I would say the big one that even, I mean, it still happens to me probably once or twice a day is thinking, and even Tony did it. Like he thought he hit tear, pulled his hand away, and then was like, oh no, it in a tear. Okay, got it. Um, it's the word like it's the you kick yourself when you thought you hit it, and then you go get some food, and you like something like rice. I did this yesterday, and then I put the rice on top of the chicken, and I was like, I didn't like I don't know what those numbers were. Um, I looked back at what was my chicken value and then did the math of what the discrepancy was between that. But right, so it's easily solved. It takes a couple seconds. Um, but that's just something that I think you get better at, right? Making sure you're
Yeah.
hitting, making sure you set appropriately. And then like Tony said with the peanut butter is like if something's in a container, if it's butter, if it's mayonnaise, if it's jelly, make sure that when you set it on there, you tear it. And I just thought of another funny one. Um, and then take it out. The other thing you want to consider is I've done, again, this is something I do a couple times per week, is like you might leave your utensil in the container or in your food bowl. And you take it out and you're like, whoa, my numbers are way off. And then you put it back in, you're like, oh, it's zero. And you're like, shit. Okay. So
Yeah.
not leaving your knife in there, or at least make sure you account for it like he did with the peanut butter. Um, Same kind of thing. It's just making sure you've got your bowl, your container teared, zeroed, and then being mindful of like what you're doing with your implement.
Yeah. The the important thing to keep in mind is using a food scale, using tracking, anything like that isn't saying restrict foods by any means or anything like that. Instead, what it's saying is just pay attention to it.
Mhm.
Like just pay attention to, peanut butter I grabbed, and as I was grabbing, I was laughing because that's always the one where people's like, "Oh, I just had a tablespoon of peanut butter." And it's like, why don't you just weigh it and just see what it is. And it's super frequent that it's at least double.
Yeah.
And so people
Especially,
are like, "Oh, that's why." Yeah, that's why. And it's not
I
that,
was just gonna say, especially with like sauces, things
huh?
like peanut butter, different textures like that, where they're not like dry pieces of food.
Yeah. And it's not, it's not don't have peanut butter, and it's not you can only have one serving of peanut butter. It's just if you're gonna have two and a half, cool, just track two and a half and just be accurate with what you're doing in the real world. And then, when you get to the point where you're out of calories, you're gonna start rethinking whether or not you want that two and a half servings of peanut butter, or maybe one is a little more appealing so that you can have some room for something else.
Right. Yeah,
But
because
maybe not, but that's your call.
right, because if you end up at the end of the day and you've got you got three-quarters of your protein to eat in your last meal of the day. We're not going to say, oh, just eat a bowl of protein. Some people will do that, but to be realistic, it's like have your normal serving, learn from the mistake, go to tomorrow and learn that you need to get more protein in earlier in the day so you're not left with your last meal of the day being just, eating 2 pounds of meat, which not everyone can do. I know some people can, but same thing with the fats or carbs. You just want to make sure that you're not leaving like you're not leaving too much behind, but you're also not having too much so that later, your meal is only one macronutrient or only two macronutrients, and it's like, wow, that's not really a meal. Uh,
Yeah.
so balance matters.
Yeah. Balance matters. We got both Gabes on board right now. We got both Gabes. We got Rolando watching. So
And two, let's
all
go.
they're all on board with the tracking, with the weighing. So yeah, and I mean, just like Jack said, it kind of depends on how hardcore you want to be. Like you can, like if you get to the end of the day and the only thing you have left is 60 grams of protein, you can just go ham on just a plate of on a bowl of chicken or chicken and a protein shake or something like that. You can. It's just,
Do you want to?
yeah, do you want to? If you
And
want to, sure. And if you don't, well, think about that the next time you come up 60 grams short by 8 p.m.
right. One of the things that I have this conversation frequently, but when clients at the end of their day and they've got some leftovers, they got some scraps left. It's like there's a weird amount of protein, there's a weird amount of carb or fat or fat, and it's like have fun with it. It's like if you got like 5 grams of fat, 15 carbs, and like 10 protein, like make a quesadilla. Like go grab some
Yeah,
tortillas and cheese, like have fun with it because we want this to be enjoyable. And it's like you had 98% of your day on point. So
yeah,
like last little bit, one of my go-tos, Greek yogurt, maple syrup, and granola. And then just kind of change the ratio based on where I'm at. Like that's my last meal. I can look forward, your last snack. I can look forward to it. But I'm
yeah.
gonna have fun with it.
Frozen fruit's a hidden game changer for that sort of stuff. I also have to throw out there one of the biggest benefit to tracking and weighing is that you don't have to remove anything from your diet. You don't have to say, I got to get rid of carbs and fat because there's too many calories in them. You can just measure it appropriately, which means when you get to the end of the day and you have those odd numbers, you can literally just have whatever you want to fill them. Like anything. This isn't like this is where I fall out of favor with a lot of other people in our bubble, Jack, because I will just say like, do you like gummy bears?
Same.
Go
That's
have gummy
exactly.
bears. Gabe, who started with me a year ago at this point, he when he was trying to get all his carbs in, he was pounding gummy bears throughout the day to get to his carbs, and he lost 40 pounds.
And he's back on the gain train, I hear.
And he's back on the gain train. All he did was track it accurately. He hit his calories, he didn't go over, and he hit his protein.
Yep. Yeah, I
I'm
think
I'm I'm literally about to go have this bowl of cinnamon toast crunch. Like this is a staple. I'm not kidding when I say I have it like 4 or 5 times a week, every single week, but it's tracked.
Mhm. So one of the things we haven't really talked about too much, and it's kind of the overarching theme, is when we're tracking, we're staying within a caloric allotment or a caloric budget, if you will. Think of it like money, right? You allocate so much money towards protein, you allocate so much money towards fat and carbs. If by the end of the day you have zero in your bank account, you did perfectly. You spent all of your money accordingly. If you have money left over, you didn't hit your goal. If you spent more money than you have, you're in debt, which is funny because if you spent more than you had, you're putting yourself potentially into a caloric surplus, which is where weight gain happens. So think of debt as fat gain, if you will. Because the
Yeah,
whole thing is if you consume more than you expend energy wise, you will gain weight. If you expend more than you consume, you will lose weight. And if those energy levels are mostly interchangeable, because there's some leeway, um, you will maintain weight. So it depends on what your goal is. So that caloric budget, that financial budget changes based on whatever your current phase is.
yeah. And Just like how, again, to just spider right off that money analogy. If you get to the end of the day, you have calories left over, you have dollars left over, you can roll those over to the next day. Or you can not roll them over, and that might just speed up your rate of fat loss a little bit if you maintain that extra deficit.
And something too, like you said, it's like you can kind of move those calories over if you need to. Ultimately, right? Well, let's look at the week. Let's look at our averages for the week. Let's make sure that your averages are really close to your goal. Make sure you're staying within your budget, right? Your spending budget is what we can think of it as. Especially with your body, right? Because it's not exactly a strict bank account like financial, like, with currency, but it's
It
close.
moves around a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. We're biological. We're not,
They're not mechanical, sadly.
money's and numbers, sadly. I've got a titanium rod in my leg. Does that count?
Yeah, I mean, basically that means you now can defy thermodynamics, so calorie deficits don't apply to you.
What? Wow. I was like, I'm excited. I was like, wait, no. Um, no, but it's important, right? And this is the value, right? Because you could be like, oh, I'm eating blah blah blah, but like Tony discussed, it's like this margin of error is a lot, and it adds up over time. And
This is how
just
you
like
this is how you fight that margin of error.
right, with hard data,
Hmm.
with proof. Um, you know, just like think of like, you think of like stress, you get used to whatever level of stress, and that becomes your new floor, your new zero, whatever you want to call it, the norm.
Yeah,
Same thing happens with food, right? People get used to eating a certain way, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I stepped on the scale, and they're like, shit. How did this
yeah,
happen? Because you got used to doing these things, and maybe some other things got introduced, and you were not as concentrated. You weren't not as aware of your food intake, of your activity. And this is a direct way to do that, right? Steps, following a program, nobody knowing how your numbers are fluctuating over time. Are you getting stronger? But then where are your calories? Where are your macros
yeah.
allocated?
It's weird, right? Since we made that analogy, I'll make this point. When people want to save money, when they're trying to get ready for like vacation or buy a car or something like that, they've got no problem tracking. They have no problem allocating money, setting money aside, projecting how much money they'll have and figuring out all that. But for whatever reason, when it comes to calories, everybody forgets how to do math. Weird.
Well, it takes work, Tony. It
It
takes
takes work. It
work.
takes work to save up for a vacation too, when you got to figure out your financial plan for that, or putting in money in a 401k, whatever you got to do with your
Yep.
money, that
Yep.
takes work too.
So
And guess what? That probably takes more work than weighing out a bowl of cinnamon toast crunch that I just showed you.
I think part of it too is like you just like it's right, like no, like you're totally right, but it's like it takes time. So does all these other things. Does your body change overnight? No, but over the course of a week, 2 weeks, we can start seeing changes if you're consistent. So, what are your priorities? What do you actually want, right? Because something that we encounter is people saying, "Well, I want blah blah blah," but then they're not doing anything like they're not being tactical about it. They're
Yeah,
just like, well, I'm just gonna like I'm doing one less beer. It's like great, but you're not looking at the value of the food. You're not
yeah,
drawing awareness to your environments. You're not drawing awareness to your relationships. Like
yeah.
it's
People will
all right.
say, yeah, they'll say, "Oh, I want to lose 20 pounds," and I'll go, "Okay, cool. Eat this many calories, this much protein every day for the next 3 weeks. Let's see where you are." Oh, okay. Well, I'll give it a try, and then I'll never hear from them again. But I will hear from them when they post about being on keto again.
Of course. And then wait a year and then they'll be complaining about being overweight again.
Yeah.
If not,
So meanwhile, I'll be at Comic-Con tomorrow because that's actually where we're doing our show tomorrow. We're doing it
oh,
at
Tony or Tommy's post. That's
yeah.
awesome.
So I'll be at the Comic-Con tomorrow with either a pizza, a slice of pizza, or a burger in my hand. People will be like, I don't understand how you do that. And I'm like, now I'm just gonna give them the link and be like, go back to the video from 24 hours ago and you'll see how I do it.
Learn, apply,
Yeah.
practice, fail, learn from failure, practice again, become expert.
Yeah. Like there's like I'm doing that Friday. Saturday, I'm on a road trip. So like there's a gas station and like a McDonald's that's on the way and like all this stuff. And I'm like, I know what to get at these places because I know the calories and all this stuff.
Yep. Yeah, it's right. Like it's something I when I'm speaking to clients and they're frustrated with how, the time that tracking takes. You have to, it's like in the past you've not committed the time to learning about food, and now it's a daily practice. Now it's a daily practice of figuring out what you need because I don't want to say wasted time, but there was time left on the table. You've learned more. Now it's learning to apply it so you can save time getting to your goal rather than spinning your wheels, spending a bunch of money on, a keto, a fat loss challenge, all these things that are quick fixes where this is like, we're not excluding anything. As long as you're not allergic to it, like,
Yeah.
have it. Is it a
By the
frozen? Is it ice cream? Is it, cinnamon toast crunch?
Yeah. By the way, that's one reason I have cinnamon toast crunch 4 or 5 nights a week. And it's not that's a reason that I meal prep my lunches 4 days a week when I go to work. Because you know how much less work it is when you just have to literally just do copy paste and chronometer and just say I'm having these foods again.
Yep.
Guess what? Now you just have to track once, copy, 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 copy. And then
Mhm.
guess what? When I have the same meals again the next week, I just copy, 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 copy again. So it takes time that first time, and then it might take a little bit of time when you veer off a little bit because it's the weekend or whatever. But when you can set yourself up for 4 or 5 days of just literal mindless copy paste, what time?
Right,
You can go to chronometer. There's an option there where it says copy the entire day over to the current day. It
right.
takes you 4 seconds. You don't have 4 seconds.
Mhm. And it's just,
Instagram will spend more time buffering a reel for you than that. You've got 4 seconds.
yeah, I think it just comes down to like, what are your priorities? You need to be intentional, and these apps make it really, really streamlined. They really do. And much like anything, there's usually friction at the beginning. Even if there's excitement, there's some friction, right? There's a
Yeah.
learning curve. But you're like, oh, I can make a recipe. I eat the same breakfast every day, or I eat these same two or three. Make a recipe. And all you have to do is hit the plus button, pick recipe, add to diary,
Yep.
eat your food.
You can do that in
10
chronometer
seconds,
too.
if that, right? I mean, and again, you should go play with something like Chronometer because you're going to learn so much about the value of food, how it serves you or doesn't. I have a new client that they're taking their whole first week just to food log. They're not even paying for this week yet. Just logging food so we can kind of see what the week looks like, draw awareness to it. And if you're familiar with Culver's, right, burgers and custard,
Hmm.
what it is. I don't know if it's just a Midwest thing or not, but
Gabe said chronometer changed how he eats, by the way.
oh yeah, well, I mean, you learn so much. Like you find how things serve you, right, or don't.
Yeah.
But like Culver's was the thing. I'm like, we have Culver's like once a month, and I get a double burger, I get buffalo tenders, I get concrete mixer, like a Dairy Queen Blizzard kind of thing. That will be almost a 25 to 3,000 calorie meal. That's more than what most people would eat, yes, but equivalent to the average person that doesn't work out 4 or 5 days a week and is 200 and almost 30 pounds. That's a lot of food for most people. They're not eating as much as I am.
Yeah.
And you can very quickly eat only breakfast and one meal of Culver's, and you might blow your caloric allotment for the day.
Hmm.
So
Well,
typing in,
just that one meal will blow it for a lot of people.
that's what I'm
Right now,
saying. Yeah,
that would blow it for me. That's
right.
like I'm in
Well,
like 2,300 calories. That one meal would set me up for the day plus 700.
right. And and this is something that I'll do every once in a while, right? Once a month is that'll end up being like a 5,000, 6,000 calorie day for me. But I don't do it all the time.
Yeah.
I I don't like nothing changes. I
It's like
just
me with that large pizza. It was a once
right.
in a while thing.
Yeah. I have a client who like he lost 40 pounds. We should get him on here is what we should do. But he lost like 40 pounds and frozen pizza wasn't off. He could still have beer every once in a while. Like We didn't take anything away. But like Gabe mentioned, it's like it changes how he views food and how it serves him. So
Hmm.
he started making different choices because he's like, wow, this has way too much fat and it doesn't allow me to do this later. And I want to do that more than I want to have that food. So, okay. So it shifts us towards, generally more whole foods, but also checking chronometer. Like, oh, could I fit this in today? You know what? I can't. I can only fit half of it though. That's a win.
That works. Let's go half.
So
And
it
that's,
it's a really cool tool.
yeah, it's super useful. It's pretty straightforward to use. It can take, like anything, like any new skill, it can take a little bit of work up front just to learn it. But you know what? Nobody got in the car and just knew how to drive either. We weren't born knowing how to walk. And guess what? We figured both of those things out. Some people, it seems like it's always their first day driving, but that's a conversation for another day. Um, they're still trying to figure it out. But
No one easily offended can come to that call.
no, yeah. It's yeah, no, no. But if you put a little bit of time, a little bit of effort, if you shoot one of us a message about getting help for getting started with it, we'll help you out. We'll walk you through it too. We'll make sure your macros are looking good. We'll show you how to log stuff. We'll show you how to barcode scan because we didn't get a chance to do that because I was using the desktop version, not the mobile. Um, but I mean, yeah, it's a lot easier than most people think it is. And for the longest time, yeah, let's bug some people. For the longest time, people would always say, and people still say that it's hard. And I chalked it up to because they would say that, and I would think about it inside, and I'm like, this is really easy. And I would just chalk it up to the fact of like, well, you've also got years of practice with it. So like it is easy to you at this point because it's second nature to me. And at some point, I'm just like, you know what though? No, it actually is pretty easy. It's pretty easy. There's a lot of people out there that can operate a vehicle. How well is a different conversation, but they can operate a motor vehicle. They spent more time trying to figure that out than it'll take to learn how to track a meal. There's people that know how to search on Netflix. They know how to search YouTube. That takes more time to learn how to search on YouTube, not find anything there. How to search on YouTube than it takes to use Chronometer. And by the way, since you already know how to search on YouTube, you know what you can use YouTube for? How do I track something in Chronometer? Enter.
There's so many videos.
Yeah. How do I create a recipe? Enter. How do I import a recipe from a website so that it just copies the macros and calories and ingredients from the internet? Enter.
So I think like one of the like we've put so many nails in this coffin, but what using a food scale, using something like Chronometer or MyFitnessPal is you're gonna have a lot more precision. You're creating a bunch of awareness about the food, the meals, everything, right? Your habits. And then you can improve your outcomes over time because we're
Mhm.
being more intentional and more data driven than just guessing and willy-nilly saying yes to this and that. You will very quickly see how your energy levels, your performance, your recovery, your aesthetic, your physique changes when you start doing these things consistently, right? Think in 2 to 3 months, what could be possible? In
Yeah.
6 to 12 months, once you become super proficient,
Yeah.
you know, you're
One quick note. We'll send everybody home. Gabe commented. Gabe, super busy guy, father, three kids. He's in a band. He works as a barber. He has a barber school, so he's got really not that much time available. He had a birthday today for one of his students at said school, and he had two donuts today, and he's still under his limit, so he's still on track to lose weight.
was there bacon on that donut?
Because let's see if he says. But it's because he tracked it. It's
Yeah,
real like it's really what it comes down to.
yep, you can work it in. But like we said, it's just like download Chronometer, type in your normal information, and just practice. Scan a couple things. You have bagels, bread, butter.
Just
Scan
play
it.
around. Just go to your pantry. There's tons of packages in there, bags, boxes. Just pick something with a barcode and just scan it and just
Yeah.
play with it.
Yep. And we've given lots of information on how to track macros and the importance of protein and carbs and all these things. So you can look back at some of our videos, you can reach out to us, you can check our Instagram or Facebook for more information on how much protein do I need? How do I determine carbs? Fats? What are good ones? What are bad ones? Don't ask us that one. You can ask us. It's
Yeah.
okay.
You can ask us.
Uh,
I'm gonna tell you they're all fine. Which, by the way, chronometer just helps, just does your macros for you too.
so, no, practice it. Get a food scale if you have one. Put the batteries in it. Change the batteries. Check your battery beeper in your scale if it's not working. But yeah, if you find something helpful, you can always tag us. You can always send us a message, share it. We'd love to hear about it.
Yeah. So with that, Jack, if anybody wants to talk to you about where to find a food scale, how to download chronometer, how to set up chronometer, and how to track stuff, how can they get a hold of you?
Even my personal number. It is no. So Instagram.
Actually, your social security number would be more useful.
Okay, so it's 3 foot. No. Modern underscore underscore strength on Instagram, Facebook, Jack Sullivan, very easily found. Mr. Turbo, Tony Davis. It's so cool that you guys can be at Comic-Con.
Yeah.
Where can you be found?
You can find me at a few different places. You can find me at on Facebook at Tony Davis, where you're watching this now. You can find, by the way, me and Jack on YouTube at Made of Metal, where you can see this archived for the rest of internet history. You can also find me on Instagram at Tony Davis Coaching. And if you want to see me do non-coaching stuff and attack people's bodies with my body, you can head to Duke City Championship Wrestling on Instagram and YouTube. See me do the pro wrestling stuff there. And yeah, you can message me. You can't message me on the Duke City pages because I won't get those, but you can message me on Tony Davis Coaching. If you want help with anything exercise nutrition related, I'm happy to have that convo with you.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So,
No, no, go ahead.
from Jack, from myself, if you're watching live, I know we had the Gabes, we had Rolando on here, so thank you as always for showing up. The Gabes are here very, very frequently, and we love having them here. So thanks to you guys, everybody that watches it, not live in the future, but they're watching a recording either here on Facebook or over on the YouTubers. We appreciate you too. Drop us a message. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, what you want to hear us talk about, and we will put some action on those deals.